The first night Harrison moved in, I heard him crying in the bathroom at 2:17 a.m. Not loud sobbing, just that quiet, broken kind of breathing someone makes when they don't think anyone can hear them. I froze in my bed, staring at the ceiling, my phone lighting up the dark with the time. We'd known each other for less than 12 hours. We weren't friends. Hell, we weren't even properly roommates yet. Just two guys forced into the same overpriced, half-furnished apartment because neither of us could afford to live alone anymore. And already, the walls felt too thin. I'd moved into the place first. Two-bedroom, old building, creaky floors, radiators that hissed like they were alive. It was supposed to be temporary. Everything in my life was temporary back then. The job I didn't love. The city I told myself I'd leave soon. The relationships that never quite stuck. Then my old roommate bailed with 3 weeks, notice, and suddenly temporary turned into find someone fast or lose the apartment. That's how Harrison ended up answering my post. We met that afternoon. He showed up with one duffel bag and a backpack, like he wasn't sure he'd stay. Tall, dark hair, tired eyes. Not model hot, but solid. Real. The kind of guy who looked like he'd grown up learning how to take up space quietly. Sorry, he said immediately, even though he was exactly on time. Traffic was worse than I thought. He apologized a lot. For his shoes on the mat. For asking where the cups were. For taking the bigger shelf in the fridge when I told him to. Red flag, maybe. Or just someone who'd learned not to ask for much. We did the awkward tour. His room, my room, the kitchen that barely fit 2 people, the couch we'd both pretend wasn't uncomfortable. We talked logistics, rent, utilities, chores, the usual roommate interview stuff. I didn't ask why he needed a place so suddenly. He didn't ask why my last roommate left. We both pretended that was normal. By evening, he'd unpacked enough to make the room feel lived in. A few books on the nightstand, a framed photo face down on the dresser. I noticed that, but didn't comment. We ordered takeout and ate on opposite ends of the couch, making polite small talk that didn't really go anywhere. Work, weather, how loud the street got at night. The kind of conversation where you're both measuring the other person, trying to figure out what kind of mess you might be sharing your life with. When I went to bed, I thought that was it. First day survived. Then came the crying. I didn't get up. I didn't knock. I just lay there, listening, feeling like an intruder in my own apartment. Eventually, the sound stopped. A toilet flushed. The bathroom light clicked off. His bedroom door closed softly. The next morning, he acted like nothing happened. Morning, he said, already dressed, coffee mug in hand like he'd lived there for years. Morning, I replied, watching him from across the kitchen. There were faint shadows under his eyes. He avoided looking at me for just a second too long. Living together does that, I'd later learn. It forces you into these quiet moments you never consented to. You learn things without being told. You notice patterns. You pick up on moods. At first we stayed careful. Separate lives, shared space. He worked early shifts. I worked late. We passed each other like strangers in a hallway, polite but distant. But the apartment didn't let us stay strangers for long. The hot water ran out fast. The walls carried sound. The couch only fit one person comfortably, which meant when we both wanted it, we had to sit too close or not at all. Boundaries blurred slowly, the way you don't notice the tide coming in until your shoes are wet. And I didn't realize how much that was going to matter until one night, weeks later, Harrison said my name in the dark like he didn't mean to, and everything between us shifted. It happened on a Thursday night, the kind that already felt heavier than it should have. I was half asleep on the couch, laptop balanced on my stomach, some show playing that I wasn't really watching. Harrison had texted earlier that he'd be late. Work thing. I didn't think much of it. I'd gotten used to the rhythm of his schedule. Keys at the door around 10, soft footsteps, his bedroom light clicking on and off. That night, it was closer to midnight. I heard the door open, then close a little harder than usual. Not slammed, just careless, like he didn't have the energy to be careful anymore. "You good?" I called out without looking up. There was a pause. Too long. "Yeah," he said finally. His voice sounded off. Tighter, like it had to squeeze its way out of his chest. I muted the TV and sat up. Long day? Another pause. I could picture him standing in the hallway, jacket still on, staring at nothing. Something like that. I should have left it there. That's what we'd been doing for weeks. Skimming the surface, respecting the invisible line between roommates and something else. But exhaustion makes you reckless. Familiarity makes you brave. Beer? I asked. He hesitated again. Then, yeah, okay. He dropped his bag by the door and joined me on the couch. Too close, the way the couch always forced us to be. His knee brushed mine. Neither of us moved away. We drank in silence at first. The TV filled the space between us with noise we didn't need. I could feel him vibrating next to me, like he was wound too tight. You want to talk about it? I asked, keeping my eyes on the screen. He let out a slow breath. I don't know how. That was new. Harrison usually knew exactly how to say nothing. So I turned to him, really looked at him. His jaw was clenched, eyes fixed on the bottle in his hand like it might give him answers. Try, I said. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. My ex showed up at work today. Oh. That bad, huh? He nodded once. Didn't even know he was back in the city. Just there, like nothing happened. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. The way Harrison said X told me enough. He say anything? Just acted normal, Harrison said. Like we were still something. Like he didn't leave without a word. I felt a flash of anger that surprised me with its intensity. That's messed up. Yeah, he said quietly. That's one word for it. We drank some more. The space between us shrank in that subtle way alcohol makes feel inevitable. His shoulder brushed mine, stayed there. I heard you, I said before I could stop myself. He stiffened. Heard me? The first night, I clarified. In the bathroom. Silence dropped between us like a heavy blanket. I'm sorry, he said immediately, reflexively. I didn't mean to. You don't have to apologize. I cut in. I just wanted you to know you weren't as invisible as you thought. He swallowed. I could see his throat move. That's kind of the problem, he murmured. I waited. I'm tired of pretending I'm fine, he said. All the time, with everyone. Something about the way he said everyone made my chest tighten. He turned toward me then. Our faces were close enough that I could see the faint crease between his eyebrows, the one that only showed up when he was stressed. You ever feel like your life got put on pause without your permission? He asked. All the time. Our eyes locked. The TV droned on, completely irrelevant now. Harrison's knee pressed more firmly against mine. His hand rested on his thigh, close enough that I was painfully aware of it. I don't want to cross a line, he said softly. My heart was beating too fast. What line? He laughed again, nervous this time. Exactly. Neither of us moved. Neither of us backed away. Living together had already erased so many boundaries. Privacy, personal space, emotional distance. This felt like the next one waiting to fall. When he finally said my name, barely louder than a breath, it didn't sound accidental anymore. It sounded like a question. And I didn't know yet whether I was brave enough to answer it. I didn't answer him right away. That's the thing about lines. You don't always see them until you're standing on top of them, toes hanging over, realizing how easy it would be to step forward and how impossible it would be to go back. Harrison cleared his throat. You don't have to. It's not that, I said quickly. Too quickly. We live together. He nodded, like he'd expected that, like he'd already rehearsed this disappointment. Yeah, I know. The way he said it made my stomach twist. Not defensive, just tired. Resigned. We sat there, knees still touching, the contact suddenly loud. I could feel the heat from him, could smell the faint mix of soap and city air on his clothes. All the small, intimate details you only notice when someone's been sharing your space for weeks. I don't want to mess this up, I admitted. He finally looked at me fully. What is this? I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Because that was the problem, wasn't it? We'd slipped into something without naming it. Late night conversations, shared meals, knowing each other's routines, moods, silences. I don't know, I said honestly, but it feels like something. That got a small smile out of him. Soft, a little sad. Yeah, it does. His hand moved before either of us seemed to decide on it. Just a few inches, resting on the couch between us, palm up. Not touching me, just there, an invitation. Or a test. I stared at it, my pulse in my ears. I thought about the lease, about the thin walls, about how complicated everything could get. Then I thought about that first night, the sound of him breaking quietly in a bathroom he thought was private. About the way he said my name earlier, like it mattered. I placed my hand in his. The contact was simple. No sparks, no fireworks. Just warm, steady pressure. Real. He let out a breath he'd clearly been holding. His thumb brushed lightly over my knuckles, like he was checking to see if I'd pull away. I'm not asking for anything, he said. I just needed to not feel alone for a minute. I squeezed his hand. You're not. That did something to him. I felt it in the way his fingers tightened, in the way his shoulders dropped like he'd finally set something down. We didn't kiss. Not then. We just sat there, hands linked, the TV still playing to an audience that wasn't paying attention. Eventually, Harrison leaned back, still holding on. His head tipped against the back of the couch, close to my shoulder but not quite touching. Is this okay? He asked quietly. Yeah, I said. It is. And it was. Surprisingly so. That night became a turning point, without either of us calling it one. After that, things changed in small, almost invisible ways. We started eating dinner together more often, sitting closer without pretending it was accidental, falling into conversations that stretched late into the night. We didn't tell anyone. There was nothing to tell, really. No labels. No declarations. Just a growing awareness of each other that made the apartment feel different. Charged, but safe. The first time he fell asleep next to me on the couch, his head tipping onto my shoulder like it belonged there. I didn't move for nearly an hour. My arm went numb. I didn't care. Living together had stripped us of privacy, sure, but it had also given us something rare. Time. Unfiltered, unpolished time. The kind where you see someone at their worst and still want to stay. I started to realize that whatever line we'd crossed that night, it wasn't a mistake. It was the beginning of something we were both quietly afraid to want. The first real boundary we broke after that wasn't physical, it was emotional. And somehow, that felt more dangerous. It started with mornings. Harrison began making 2 cups of coffee instead of 1. No announcement, no comment. Just sliding a mug across the counter like it was the most natural thing in the world. I stopped wearing headphones when I worked late in the living room. He'd sit at the table with his laptop, occasionally glancing up to ask what I thought about something he was writing, or complaining about a coworker like I was already part of his inner circle. We were careful though, almost overly so. No touching beyond what could be explained away. No kisses. No late-night confessions that crossed into territory we couldn't retreat from. Until one night, neither of us slept. The radiator in his room broke sometime after midnight, clanging and hissing like it was possessed. I woke to the sound, then to my phone lighting up. Harrison, any chance I can crash on the couch? I think this thing's trying to kill me. I stared at the message longer than necessary. Me, yeah, I'm still up. He came out a minute later, in sweatpants and a faded t-shirt, hair messed up, eyes tired but softer than usual. The apartment felt smaller with him standing there, like the walls were leaning in. Thanks, he said. I'll try not to take over. You won't, I replied, already shifting to make space. We lay on opposite ends at first, the couch barely long enough for one person to stretch out comfortably. The TV was on low, some late-night infomercial neither of us cared about. I hate that thing, he muttered, staring at the ceiling. The radiator? Yeah. And silence, he added after a beat. I turned my head. Silence? He nodded. That's when my brain gets loud. I didn't joke, didn't deflect. Just said, you can talk, or not. Either way. He rolled onto his side to face me. There were only inches between us now. I could feel the warmth of him through the thin cushion, the steady rhythm of his breathing. I don't think my ex ever actually loved me, he said quietly. I think he loved being loved. That hit closer than I expected. I'm sorry, I said. He shrugged. I'm starting to think it wasn't about him. I've always been easy to disappear around. Make myself small. Convenient. I swallowed. You don't do that here. His eyes searched mine. No. No, I said firmer. You take up space. You just don't realize it. Something in his expression cracked open then. Not dramatic. Just honest. He shifted closer, not touching, yet, but close enough that it felt intentional. Can I ask you something? He said. Yeah. Are we doing something? He asked slowly. Or are we just pretending we're not? The question hung between us, heavier than anything physical could have been. I thought about all the almosts. All the care. All the nights that felt charged with things we weren't saying. I think, I said, choosing my words carefully, we're doing something very real. We're just scared of naming it. A breath left him, shaky but relieved. He didn't kiss me. Instead, he reached out and rested his forehead against my shoulder. Just that. A quiet, deliberate closeness that felt more intimate than anything else could have. I wrapped my arm around him without thinking. He relaxed immediately, like his body had been waiting for permission. And in that moment, on a too-small couch, in an apartment neither of us planned to stay in forever, I understood something clearly for the first time. Forced proximity hadn't blurred our boundaries. It had shown us exactly which ones we wanted to cross, and which ones we never wanted to rebuild. The next morning felt different in a way that was impossible to explain without admitting something had changed. Harrison woke up before me, or at least pretended to. I knew because when I shifted, half asleep, his body tensed slightly under my arm. Not pulling away, just aware. I opened my eyes to the gray light of early morning filling the living room. My arm was still around him. His head was tucked against my chest like it had always belonged there. For a moment, I panicked. Not because it felt wrong, but because it felt easy. Too easy for something that could complicate everything. I loosened my arm just enough to let him move if he wanted to. He didn't. Instead, he tilted his head up, eyes blinking open, meeting mine with that soft, unguarded look people only have right after waking up. Hey, he murmured. Hey, neither of us moved. The apartment was quiet in that rare way it only is early in the morning. No traffic yet, no neighbors, just the sound of breathing. I didn't mean to fall asleep like that, he said, though there was no real apology in his voice. It's fine, I replied. I didn't mean to let you. A small smile curved his mouth. Guess we're even. He shifted carefully, like he was afraid of breaking the moment. Slowly, he sat up, running a hand through his hair. I felt the loss of his weight immediately. I should probably, he gestured vaguely toward the hallway, check if the radiator stopped trying to murder me. Yeah, I said. Probably. He stood, then hesitated, turned back. Thank you, he added. For last night. For what? For not making it weird. I almost laughed. Harrison, I think we passed weird a while ago. That got a real laugh out of him. Soft, relieved. Yeah, fair. The rest of the day unfolded cautiously. We both worked from home, staying in our separate spaces, but the awareness lingered. Every sound of his footsteps, every time we crossed paths in the kitchen, like there was a current humming just beneath the surface. That night, neither of us mentioned the couch. But we didn't avoid each other either. Around 10, I found him standing on the fire escape, jacket pulled tight, staring out at the city lights. "You okay?" I asked, stepping out beside him. "Yeah," he said, then corrected himself. "Better than I was." The metal railing was cold under my palms. The air smelled like rain. "I keep thinking about what you said," he added. "About taking up space." I glanced at him. "And?" "I think I've spent a long time shrinking myself for people who never asked me to," he said, and then blaming myself when they didn't notice. "That's not on you." "I know," he said quietly. "I'm starting to." We stood there shoulder to shoulder, close, but not touching. The city stretched out in front of us, indifferent and alive. "Can I ask you something kind of selfish?" he said. "Sure. If this, whatever this is," he gestured between us, "gets complicated, would you regret it?" The question landed heavy. I thought about the lease, the risk, the possibility of losing not just a roommate, but someone who'd quietly become important. Then I thought about the alternative, pretending we hadn't felt any of this. "No," I said honestly. "I'd regret not finding out more." He exhaled, like he'd been holding that question in his chest for days. "Okay," he said. "Me too." That was the night we kissed. Not rushed, not desperate. Just a quiet moment where he turned toward me, searched my face one last time for doubt, and leaned in slowly enough that I could have stopped him. I didn't. His lips were warm, tentative at first, like he was asking permission even as he kissed me. When I responded, deepening it just slightly, his hand came up to my jacket, fingers curling into the fabric, like he needed something solid to hold on to. When we pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. "So," he whispered, "we're definitely crossing lines now." "Yeah," I said, but I think they were already gone. Living together hadn't forced us into this. It had simply made it impossible to lie about what we wanted. And now that we'd finally said it, without words, there was no pretending we could go back. After that kiss, everything slowed down. Not in a bad way, just intentionally. We didn't rush back inside. We didn't tumble into anything we couldn't undo. Harrison stayed close, his hand brushing mine now and then, like he was reassuring himself it had really happened. Inside the apartment, we stood awkwardly near the door, suddenly unsure of what the next move was supposed to be. "So," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "This is new territory," I smiled. "We're very bad at casual." "Painfully," he agreed. We ended up on opposite ends of the couch again, laughing softly at ourselves, letting the moment settle instead of pushing it. That restraint, oddly, made everything feel more serious. That became my rhythm for a while. Affection without urgency. Touch without expectation. Kisses that lingered but didn't escalate. It was almost like we were teaching each other how to be gentle again. But living together doesn't let you stay in that in-between space forever. One night, a few days later, the power went out during a storm. The apartment went dark, except for the glow of the city outside the windows. The wind rattled the frames. Rain hammered the fire escape. Harrison knocked on my door this time. Actually knocked. "Hey," he said when I opened it. "You okay with company?" I stepped aside. "Always." We lit a few candles and sat on the floor, backs against the bed, talking over the sound of the rain. About nothing at first, then about everything. "I think I forgot how to be wanted," he admitted quietly. "Not chased, just wanted. For who I am when I'm not performing." I didn't answer right away. I reached for his hand instead, threading my fingers through his. "You don't have to perform here," I said. His thumb brushed over my knuckles, grounding. "That's why this scares me." "Me too." He turned toward me, eyes searching, but I don't want to run from it. I leaned in and kissed him again, slow, certain this time. When he kissed me back, there was more confidence in it, more trust, like he was finally letting himself believe this wasn't going to disappear overnight. We ended up on the bed eventually, fully clothed, just lying side by side, talking until the storm faded and the city lights flickered back on. No dramatic moment, no point of no return, just two people choosing not to pull away. Later, when the lights came back and reality settled in again, Harrison exhaled and laughed softly. "You know this is going to change things," he said. "Yeah," I replied, "but I think they were already changing." He rolled onto his side to face me. "I don't want this to be another almost." "It won't be," I said, surprising myself with how sure I sounded. Living together had erased the easy exits. There was no pretending we could just disappear from each other's lives. And maybe that was the point. Because when someone sees you every day, at your quietest, your messiest, your most unguarded, and still chooses to stay, that kind of closeness doesn't fade easily. It deepens. And we were only just beginning to understand how deep it could go. The thing about living together after acknowledging something like this is that you can't hide from it anymore. Every shared moment feels louder. We started telling the truth in small doses, not big confessions, just quiet honesty that slipped out when neither of us was braced for it. Like the night Harrison admitted he still flinched when his phone buzzed unexpectedly. Or the afternoon I told him I'd gotten so used to being the easy one in relationships that I didn't know how to ask someone to stay. Those conversations didn't happen across a table. They happened while brushing our teeth side by side, while folding laundry on the couch, while lying on opposite ends of the bed, feet tangled without thinking. Forced proximity has a way of stripping away performance. One evening, a few weeks later, Harrison came home early. I heard his keys, then nothing. No footsteps, no greeting. I found him sitting on his bed, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. "Hey," I said carefully. "What happened?" He looked up, eyes tired but steady. "My ex texted me." I waited. "He wants to meet, says he wants closure." "And do you?" Harrison thought about it. Really thought. "I think I wanted it before," he said slowly. "But now, I don't want to reopen something I finally closed." Something in his voice told me he wasn't just talking about his ex. I sat beside him, close enough that our shoulders touched. "You don't owe him anything." "I know," he said. Then he looked at me. "But I wanted you to know. I don't want secrets here." That word, here, did something to me. "Thank you," I said, "for telling me." He nodded, like that mattered more than any dramatic reassurance. That night, we stayed in his room, lying back against the pillows, talking about what came next. Not forever, just next. "What if this ends badly?" he asked quietly. "It might," I said honestly. He winced. "That's not comforting." I smiled softly. "But what if it doesn't?" He turned his head toward me. "You're terrible at being cautious." "Only when something feels worth it." He studied my face like he was committing it to memory. Then he reached for my hand, fingers lacing with mine. "I don't feel like I have to disappear around you," he said. "That's new for me." "Yeah," I replied. "Same." We didn't need to say what that meant. Living together had already seen us at our most ordinary. Bedhead. Bad moods. Silence. The lack of pretense. And now it was seeing us choose each other, not in grand gestures, but in daily, deliberate ways. The lease still hung over us like a deadline. Reality still existed outside those walls. But for the first time in a long while, neither of us was counting down to escape. We were staying. And that choice, quiet, mutual, unspoken, felt bigger than any promise either of us had ever made before. The shift from almost to together didn't come with fireworks. It came with groceries. One Saturday morning, we stood in the kitchen arguing quietly, about whether we actually needed two kinds of olive oil. Harrison leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching me read labels like my life depended on it. "You know," he said, "normal people just pick one. Normal people don't cook with the wrong smoke point." I shot back. He smiled. That soft, fond smile he'd started wearing more often lately. "You're impossible." "And yet," I said, dropping the bottle into the basket, "you're still here." He didn't joke that time, just nodded. "Yeah, I am." That was how it felt now. Chosen. Reaffirmed in small ways that didn't need to be announced. We told people eventually. Carefully. Casually. Like it hadn't been quietly rewriting our lives for months already. Friends raised eyebrows at the roommate part. Some warned us. Some smiled knowingly. The truth was, we'd already faced the hard parts in private. We'd fought, too, about dishes, about space, about how Harrison shut down when he felt overwhelmed, about how I tried to fix things that weren't mine to fix. But the fights didn't feel like exits. They felt like negotiations. One night, months later, we sat on the fire escape again, legs stretched out, the city humming below us. "Our lease is up soon," Harrison said. I nodded. "I know." Silence stretched between us. Not uncomfortable, just heavy with possibility. "Do you want to keep doing this?" he asked. "Not the apartment. Us." I looked at him. Really looked. The man I'd first met with one bag and guarded eyes. The man who no longer apologized for taking up space. "Yeah," I said, "I do." He smiled, relief washing over his face like he'd been bracing for impact. Me too. We didn't decide everything that night. We didn't need to. Some things didn't require blueprints. Living together had forced us into honesty, into proximity, into seeing each other clearly before we ever touched, before we ever promised anything. It had stripped away the fantasy and left something better behind, something real. Sometimes I think back to that first night, the quiet crying through thin walls, and I wonder how close I came to missing all of this, how easy it would have been to stay distant, polite, safe. But forced proximity didn't ruin us. It taught us how to stay. And every morning, I wake up next to him now, coffee already brewing somewhere in the apartment. I know this much for certain. Some boundaries aren't meant to last. Some are just waiting for the right person to cross them with you.